they're preparing for something big to happen, and we need to be getting prepared. We have the White House coming out with an official statement. They just made this last night on Friday. They made this official statement that we need to be getting prepared for something big to happen, potentially to our critical infrastructure. This made it all the way up to the White House, right? They are even getting prepared for this. So this is big. This is official. They are signaling that something is going on and we need to be getting ready for it, all right? And I'm talking big things like the grid going down, the internet communications going down, or a combination of those, honestly, because if the grid goes down, everything relies on that, right? The internet's not going to work if massive amounts of the grid are out and the servers can't run. They don't have power for the servers, and they don't have power for the radio towers, the transmission towers for the cell phones. Then that goes down as well already. So most likely the grid is going to be targeted here, and they're giving a big warning. This made it all the way to the White House and the National Security Agency. They are now issuing a warning as well through the White House that big stuff is coming and we need to be getting prepared, all right? So this is on top of Canada's government as well. They just updated their continuity of government document, right? So this was just last week. They updated their COG, and that essentially is their document that they have what they do in a major disaster. And they updated their COG for a major nuclear event in Canada, right? That's what they are updating it for. And this document was going into poisoned and radiated food and what they would do with that, all right? It was also going into how the Canadian government would go into underground bunkers and tunnels that are near Ottawa, Canada. That's what this continuity of government updated version was saying for Canada, and this happened just last week, all right? They're talking about getting down in the bunkers. They're talking about having food storage, long-term food storage, because the soil and the plants could be poisoned, all right, from a blast. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that this could go on for a while as well, this contamination. That's what this document was saying, and the government is preparing to continue in an event like this in Canada, in Ottawa, which, if you don't know where that is, that's right above New York, right over there near New York, Pennsylvania, all right, near New England, right over there, right on the border as well, Ottawa is. So they're preparing to evacuate 2 tunnels, they said, underground, the Canadian government, all right? So they're preparing for big things to happen. And when we see multiple government warnings, all right, if you've been following my channel, there have been dozens of these warnings of top officials from different agencies, and now it's made it all the way to the White House, all right? That's how it normally is. It's like it's got to go through this giant bureaucracy and hit 10 different agencies, and then it gets to the White House, it gets their attention, and then they issue an official narrative on it as well, that we could see these big strikes on our critical infrastructure. So we need to be getting prepared, guys. They've been priming us for this for months, all right? These warnings have been getting more and more extreme for months, and now it's up to the White House level. They are responding to these warnings. So this is serious. We need to be getting prepared, and they're saying that this could happen very soon, and you need to be getting stocked up on gas tanks, all right? You need to have a generator. You need to have water tanks. I have a giant 200-gallon water tank in the back of my truck right now. I am in my RV with my family. We are completely off-grid in our RV, and we operate off a generator and water tanks, all right? And we've been doing that on and off for the past 3 years. But you need to, even that, I don't feel prepared enough, all right? I don't feel hardened enough for an event for the grid to go down, because even if my tanks are filled to the brim, okay, all my gas tanks, all my water tanks, that's still only going to last me a month, maybe 2 max if I'm really conservative with it. And then what do you do after that? You need to have long-term plans and have long-term food storage. You need to have water these little water things, all right? I was drinking out of the river earlier, this little Sawyer mini water filter, all right? I was drinking straight out the river, out of it earlier. We were down swimming in the river with my family, just, you know, taking some time to enjoy life for a second. And I was drinking out of it with this. So get one of these too. You can drink right out of the river. Any fresh water source you can drink from with this. You can't drink salt water, all right? It's not going to filter that out. And it doesn't filter contaminants out. It only filters biological contaminants because they're a lot bigger, like bacteria and things like that. But this could save your life, having one of these one day. No product placement, no affiliation or anything like that. And I literally just thought of this because it was sitting in my car over here because we were at the river earlier and I wanted to drink it and taste that river water. All right, so get this stuff. Have water, have gas, have energy, have food, because they're warning the grid could go down. The Canadian government is getting prepared for a nuclear hit on Canada directly and talking about going into bunkers. So let's dive into this warning here. All right, we have an official statement all the way from the White House. And here's the article. They're talking about this malicious code that is going around, and they're worried that it could disrupt the U.S. military in a response, right? They're worried that this could be activated to take out critical infrastructure so we can't even respond to an attack. All right, that's what the White House is worried about. That's what the U.S. military is worried about. That's what top officials are worried about right now. So here's the article. It is, quote, U.S. hunts Chinese malware that could disrupt American military operations. And it says the Biden administration is hunting for malicious computer code it believes China has hidden deep inside the networks controlling power grids, communication systems, and water supplies that feed military bases in the United States and around the world, according to American military intelligence and national security officials. All right. So this is what they're reporting on, and it has made it all the way up to the White House that they are actually worried about this now. So that means you need to be getting worried about this. That means there's an official narrative out there that something big could happen, and they're getting prepared. And they're saying that, okay, it would affect the bases, but it would also affect your own critical infrastructure as well. So your power could go out, especially regions close to military bases. That's what they're warning of. And I mean, these bases are all over the place. It's hard to get away from them. Even if you are 100 miles away in a radius, you could still be affected by this, and you could still have your power shut off. And going further into this article, it says officials say that the initial searches for the code have focused first on areas with a high concentration of American military bases. All right, so they're worried that U.S. military bases are being targeted right now, and they could cut off their critical infrastructure. And even the White House is worried about it. They're saying the White House, in response, they were asking them about these events, and they issued a statement on Friday night that said, quote, the Biden administration is working relentlessly to defend the United States from any disruptions to our critical infrastructure, including by coordinating interagency efforts to protect water systems, pipelines, rail and aviation systems, among others. All right, so that's coming out of the White House, said Adam Hodge, the acting spokesperson for the National Security Council. He was the one that responded for the White House. So they're saying they're working relentlessly to defend the U.S. from any disruptions to our critical infrastructure, including protecting our water systems, pipelines, rail, and aviation systems, among others. All right, so they're saying our critical infrastructure could be targeted and there could be major disruptions, and they're working right now to prevent those disruptions, especially near U.S. military bases. So if you are near a major base, you need to be on red alert. You need to be prepared for potentially a major disruption. All right, and if we do see something like this that goes on for weeks, especially if it is near a military base, I mean, we could see martial law like scenarios. We could see the military on the streets trying to keep peace as there's major disturbances, okay? People are going to start to lose it. I remember I didn't have power for over 2 weeks from a major hurricane, all right? This was decade and a half ago. This was 15 years ago. And I remember I didn't have power for over 2 weeks, and it was rough. It was hard, all right? It's hard for people to live without power. It's hard for people to not have these basic necessities, and now everything's connected to it. Back then, you still could call people on your phone, but now the internet is through the power. If there's no power, there's no internet. All right, if there's no power, the water pumps probably won't work, and there's no water. All right, that's what could happen, and we could see societal chaos. We could see riots if there is a big city that gets its power shut off, and we could see the military come in, especially if it is near a base, come in and take over, right? And what did we see? Remember a few months ago, all these different states, we saw major military movements all over the place. We were seeing tanks on the street in places like Idaho Falls. There were tanks on the street, all right? And we were seeing major military vehicles flying over metropolitan areas, all right? We saw B-2 Spirit bombers flying over Miami. We saw all these different major military events in the past few months. And also at the same time, they've been warning that we could see a grid down scenario. So they could already have a lot of this military equipment in place in order for a grid down scenario. And they could have even equipment like generators and med trucks, things like that, to handle the hospital operations and to keep critical things like that online, like hospitals and government buildings. They could have massive generators already in place as well to keep those going. So you guys need to get stocked up. You need to have some kind of generator for the power to go out. We saw the largest power grid in the US, PJM Interconnect. They issued an emergency alert just a few days ago warning that we could see rolling blackouts, all right? They could see rolling blackouts. And this is for a lot of states on the East Coast, all right? PJM covers a ton of states kind of in the Middle East of the US, all right? So we could see rolling blackouts there. We also had California issue a rolling blackout notice to over 40 million people as well. That happened just last week. They sent text messages to people's phones saying, turn off your appliances now, save power now, because we could have rolling blackouts, all right? So these things are happening. We could see a grid failure scenario for any number of reasons, all right? For blackouts, because the grid is being dismantled and the grid is being overloaded as well. Like the grid draw is being increased every single year. People need more power. There's more people, there's more things going on the grid every single year. We need more power, but power plants are being taken offline as well at the same time. So it's creating a huge issue. And this is on top of the cyber attacks that we could see. They're saying that this malicious code, and they are working, quotes, the Biden administration is working relentlessly to defend the U.S. from any disruptions to our critical infrastructure. Sorry about that, my phone died, but make sure you guys are getting prepared, all right? Make sure you guys are working to be prepared for a major event like this, because they could also use an event like this to usher in digital IDs, digital currencies, okay? It could be the solution to these events, all right? When the grid comes back on, there could be a major grid down scenario. They could want to track and trace everything to make it more, quote, secure, all right? That could be the goal here as well. That could be a, quote, solution that they have as well, is to have everyone have like an internet ID to get online. That way they know who can access the internet, who's getting online, who's accessing this, so they can trace it back to figure out who's doing this, right? That could be what they're saying as well. And we already see these things like FedNow being put in place. We see these CBDCs being put in place as well. The New York Fed and the San Francisco Fed are both working on these central banking digital currencies that they push after. And we could also see rationing scenarios. They were talking about this going on for weeks. They were saying the US military could be incapacitated for weeks and not able to do their job. All right, so just imagine your power going out for weeks, even 2 weeks, the water being out. Things would get bad very quickly, all right? And you need to be prepared for it. You need to be ready for it. Maybe have a location that you can go to. Have a bug out location that if the power does go out, you have a little spot, you have a little property that you can go to out in the woods or out in wherever, where you have your generator, you have your supplies, you have your stuff, and you can just kind of bug out and camp there, all right? Maybe you have an RV that you can fill up and just have it ready to go, all right? Have it filled with some totes of food and some resources, have the water tank filled up, things like that, so you can leave, you're ready to go whenever something like that happens. So just make sure you guys are getting prepared, all right? They are getting us ready for something big. So make sure you guys are stocked up on candles, on kerosene lamps, flashlights, batteries, all these things that you might need if the power goes out. They have little battery banks for phones and electronics. They have computer battery banks, all these things you could have. I have a couple of them for my phone for long-term camping or long-term being off-grid, things like that. It'll recharge your phone 4 or 5 times, all right? So look into these things. You might need them. They could save your life one day, because this is making it all the way up to the White House. They're preparing for these grid down situations, all right? They're saying they are working to prevent disruptions to critical infrastructure, our pipeline, our grid, our water, all right? Make sure you have tons of water bottles. I always try to have a bunch of water bottles just stored up just in case you need it, all right? So have a bunch of water bottles, have batteries, have lamps, have all your tanks filled up, because we could see this hit at any moment. This is a very live situation, and they might want to do this situation in the summer as well. We could see this disruption happen in the summer. We've seen all this military movement, and it could be related. So let me know what you guys think. What are you doing to get prepared? Are you off grid? Are you working on getting off grid? And there's downsides to being off grid as well. You have to be very careful. I just read this story of this family that went off grid, and they found the family and nobody was alive. They found the family and it was very bad conditions. They'd been like this for like a month or two, couple months, and nobody found them. And they were living off grid in the woods, and I'm not sure what happened. They're trying to figure out what exactly happened, but they weren't living in the best conditions. They didn't have the best setup. They weren't prepared, all right, to deal with all this stuff. It's a lot of stuff. It's like a whole nother job you have to deal with when you're completely off grid, just getting resources and things like this. It's a lot of effort and a lot of energy. And there was a whole family that they found, and nobody survived, all right? So you have to be very careful doing stuff like this, being off grid, being out there in the middle of nowhere, not having service, not having access to these resources. Things could deteriorate very quickly if you're not prepared and if you're not ready. All right, so let me know what you're doing. Are you halfway there? Are you getting there? Do you have a solar panel? Do you have a generator? Do you have do you have a well, all right? Do you have like a spring, some kind of spring on your property, all right? Some kind of water system, a river, something that you can access, because if the grid goes down, your well won't work, all right? Unless it's a solar well that you have your own system for, and then you still have to worry about EMP-like events, electromagnetic pulses that could wipe out those as well. So how far are you? Let me know down below. What are you working on your off-grid property as well, on your off-grid homestead? Let me know down below. We're going to get back to our property here in a little bit. It's just been extremely hot, 100+ temperatures, and it has not been safe there to be in an RV. That's what I mean. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know when to bail out. You have to know when to go to a different location, because this location isn't working. Our property is 100+ degrees in the middle of summer, so we just have been bailed out for a few months here, all right, going on a month now, but we are going to go back to our property and keep working on our off-grid homestead. All right, so let me know what you guys are working on. Please hit it up for me down there to get this video out to more people, because people need to know what's going on. All right, people need to be prepared for this. They need to have informed consent that we could see major attacks on our grid, and the more people are prepared, the less impact it's going to be on everyone else, on you and everyone else. It's going to be less impact because they won't be scrounging, they won't be scavenging, they won't be causing chaos in the streets if they are prepared and they have their own resources, and they could potentially even have enough resources to help other people in situations like that. So make sure you are ready, make sure you're prepared. Please hit it up for me down there to get this warning out to more people, all right, because it's devastating when the power goes out. Let me know down below too, what's the longest you've ever had your power go out? Longest I've ever had is over about 2 weeks in Florida, and that was just insane, and we had to give up and go to a hotel after that because it was just too hot. It was too hot. So let me know the longest you've ever had your power out, because it's hard. It's like living a whole different life when you don't have power, all right? So please hit it up for me down there. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all the viewers, all the blessings that you guys give, and I hope you guys have a big old blessed day.